saying that you've been watching.
Yeah.
Take a couple of minutes for the people to come in, but
Yeah.
this part will be on the replay. Um,
Okay.
so you were saying that you've been watching Soulogy for 2.5 years, and we thank you for that.
Yeah,
And you were,
about 20 years. Yeah.
yeah, and you
I
were
just
saying,
love the way
yeah,
you interview the people that are not what you call your normal public profile people have got, got high profiles. The average person are doing all their work behind the scenes that we don't generally hear about or see about, but they're doing some amazing work. And I just think it's fantastic that not only do you interview them, but you gain their whole story. An interview doesn't go for 10 minutes. It goes for, an hour or more, whatever is appropriate.
yeah,
And I think that is so good for the average person to realize that so many people are out there doing some incredible work that the
yeah,
mainstream media will never put them on. And you do that. And I just
yeah.
honor you for doing that.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah, and I like that part. That's why I wanted you to repeat it. The part about you have, what did you say, unusual people? Or was it? I mean, I know what you're saying, like from the
Yeah,
stereotypical conventional wisdom
absolutely. Yeah.
perspective. But yeah, that's true. I mean, that's it, it's strange but true. I was talking to a guy over here. They have I'm in Sedona, and they're having
Yeah.
like an expo in the parking lot with tents, and people have their wares
Mm,
and everything. And
mm.
there's a guy over there. He's going to come on next week. He does some interesting stuff. He gifted me some really amazing
Oh, yeah.
stuff. I'm going to put on my hair
Good.
so maybe it'll stop falling out. But he was. I said, well, well, come on over and you know, come on over sometime in the studio, and we'll do a show. He
Mm,
said, I don't see you out there that much, and I said, man, we do, at least two, usually 3 or 4 a day. He goes, I didn't know
mm,
you did that many. I only see like 2 or 3 a week. And I said, well, we get suppressed a lot. And he said, that doesn't surprise me. But if you think
mm,
about, and he got it, because he knows we don't really get into like conspiracy stuff and disclosure, some of the more salacious stuff.
mm,
But he recognizes that, yeah, what you do, that, these unusual people
mm.
are not afforded a voice, you know, um, traditionally and currently.
No.
So we're going to do everything we can to take it mainstream. But, I was trying to catch up on all the messages and emails and requests to come on. And
Mm,
I saw yours, and I don't even know how long ago you wrote. And and I don't normally do this. I don't normally go check people out. I just go off a feeling. But something made me go to your page, and
mm.
and I picked up on enough of your story, uh, which I was very intrigued with, and so I'm really excited
Okay.
to have you,
Thanks for that.
another unusual person, come on and
I love
tell
that. I love that.
a story. But yeah, so welcome. Let me put your name up so everybody knows you.
Yeah.
There
Thanks,
we
man.
go. Yeah, so
Beautiful.
I'm just going to turn it over to you. I like to ask people, have you always been this weird, or when did or did you have a wake
Yeah,
up
I like the way
experience?
you asked that question.
But with
Um,
you have such a
yeah,
well, and you can go ahead and talk about that if you want. But you have such a powerful story. What I picked up on it, and I was really
yeah. What did you pick up on? So I
well.
know where
I
to start.
picked up on the recent stuff,
Okay.
and I'm not
Yeah.
sure if I got it all right, but I'm pretty sure because I kind of speed read through
Yeah.
the internet when I surf it because I really don't surf it
Yeah.
anymore. But something to the effect that you had met, I would say your twin or your divine partner, a divine
Yep.
playmate, a soulmate, or I don't know
Yep.
how you want to express that, but that
Yeah.
um, on the surface, um, how um, she they transition, and how
Hmm.
you have taken the whole experience and created a beautiful positive wave of amazing frequencies.
Yeah. Thank you, Todd. I like the way you've expressed that, and that was the reason I wanted to come on because, and I will go back to the backstory of that too, but we'll
Sure.
finish at the end and then we'll go back. The whole purpose of doing this was to, excuse me, was to share with the Western world that I don't think does death very well.
Right.
I think we're always in this space of fear, intrepidation, and we're also very much drugged out, and you're unconscious. And I felt with what the experience I had with Terenia, and to be able to do what we did, knowing that she was dying, knowing that she had cancer, and the journey of 2 years to be able to bring her to a point where, when she went into palliative care with me at home here, when we decided that's what we were going to do, that we talked about it, we discussed it, we said what she wanted to do, and I'll talk about that a little later on. Actually, I might as well talk about it now, and then we'll go back.
Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I think I need to go back, and we'll come back to that part of the end, or later on. But my story really goes back to coming off a farm and learning what farm life was like. And my family was a very, very loving family. I never experienced violence, aggression, drugs, alcohol. I lived a very naive life, I think, in some respects. And it's then when I left there, the old farmers used to get really pissed off with me because I didn't go on the farm because I was a big man, I had big hands. They said, what a waste of a man not being on the farm. And then I went teaching for 30 years. I worked in Melbourne for 3 years and realised that wasn't where my life was to go, and then became a teacher, which I loved. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I was recognised for being very good at what I did. And underpinning everything I taught was personal development, even though I taught many different subjects in secondary school. It was always about empowering my students to think for themselves and to be able to see their own self-worth. I thought I'd go to 65, top up my super, but in 2012, there was a massive shift that occurred. And I suppose I can go back a bit further. My marriage ended in 2006, which was a massive year. That year, my dad passed away, my business was sold, I had a restaurant, I moved house, I divorced, property settlement, all that, and then went to Nepal, my first overseas trip. And at that stage, I was 51. So that, to me, became a massive pivotal point. And you talked about, are we awakening and all those kind of things. It really wasn't that at that stage, but I felt when I climbed up to the top of a mountain, which was higher than Everest Base Camp, which I was quite proud of, 7 o'clock, seeing the sunrise over Mount Everest and just bursting into tears. And what connected with me in that moment was all the people who knew my story, who just wished me well. And to me, that was a massive cleansing. I sat beside the guy who organised the trip in Nepal, and I just cried and cried, and he sat there with me. I then came back, and then the following year, that's when my whole life started to really change, because that's when I did all what we would call our inner work. I studied NLP, did a lot of study, did a lot of reading, and that's where all my skills started to come together as a healer, all the energy work that I do. And I remember I started picking up a tarot deck, an Oracle tarot deck made by John Holland. Some people in the game will know who he is. And I met him in Melbourne at a house event. He was sitting by himself, no one was around. And I was able to sit with him for probably about 15 minutes. And I said to him, John, how do you use your deck? And he said, you just read it, put it to one side, and then look at the colours, look at the numbers, look at the symbols, and just trust your own intuition. And that's that side of my life that I never saw or expected to happen started to unfold. Excuse me. And as that proceeded, being a person that really didn't want to go out into the world and show, and I think that came about from my parents, particularly my dad's upbringing. You stayed humble. You didn't speak publicly or anything like that, and I never did. It was something that I was quite reserved about, and I'd often give my power away to other people. I remember even when I was teaching, if I spoke on stage for an assembly, I'd ask another teacher, well, how do you think that went? And I realised years later I was giving away my power to other people instead of trusting my own intuition in this situation, which has been part of my journey. And then I remember there was people that I met, and one of the things that I like to share is that people come into our life, and we've heard the statement, a reason or a season or a lifetime, but I see the synchronicity of events when people come in to assist and help us in our growth and in what I would like to call fulfilling our soul's mission, whatever it is that we chose to do this lifetime. And there was a couple that I met in Koroit, which is down on the south coast of Victoria in Australia. And this lady was doing psychic readings at the Port Fairy Folk Festival. And I remember, I don't know where this came from. I said, "Can I come and join you?" And she said, "Yes." Now, I'd never gone out publicly, and that was the first time I ever did readings publicly. And the biggest thing for that was some of my ex-students saw me there, some of my cousins saw me there. So here I am publicly going out and saying, well, this is the next direction of my life. So that was a change in itself. And that continued to evolve. And then in 2011, 2012, as a teacher, which happens to be at the age around 57, and if we understand Saturn return, that's where Saturn takes you into the next chapter of your life, what I would call the wisdom years of your life. And one of my students said to me, "You should write a book about what you teach." The teacher's aide who was in my class all the time, in the time of students I was teaching, she'd often be in tears because of what I was teaching was bringing up all her stuff. And she said to me one day, she said, "What you teach, you need to share with the rest of the world." And so you're looking at the synchronicities of all these. And then the next part was, there was a camp that I used to run. And the camp, this particular time, I've been asking my administration boss to come along with me. And for 3 years or 4 years, she didn't come. But this particular time she did. And the whole camp just didn't go well, not the way I wanted it to be. But I saw the bigger picture of it and realised at that particular moment that I remember looking at my teacher's aide and she said, "Don't look at me." And I just said, "I think that's a signal or sign for me that I'm to leave teaching." So for the next 6 months, I agonised over that choice. And it was painful because I loved teaching and I didn't want to leave. But I went to my boss and I said to him, "Can I have 6 months long service leave?" And he said, "Well, you take 12. I did. I didn't answer. My body did. The answer was just straight out yes. And I think, where the hell did that come from? So for the next 12 months, I thought I'd be doing programs for new teachers. So I spent 9 months preparing all that, trialing it, and it was quite successful, but no school would buy it. And I realised that door was not to open for me. There was a whole other chapter to play out. So at the end of my long service leave, I picked up the phone, or tried to pick up the phone, to ask for emergency teaching. My body wouldn't let me pick the phone up. So I resigned.
Right.
And that started the next 10 years, which I'll pause on in a moment. The next 10 years is where we're up to now. This incredible journey that what my life has been.
So this was 2012.
2012.
And when was your Saturn return? What year was that?
That would have been in 2000. That would have been the year before, 2011.
Yeah, that's my understanding. That do you just have one Saturn return in your life?
No, it comes.
Yeah, because I had
years.
I'm pretty sure I had one in 2011, and I think I'm having another one right now. Based on my friend over here, Ty. He's a master astrologer. I forget what he calls it. But I was just I don't know much about that, but okay, continue. Thank you.
Thank you. So I then left teaching, and the next part was I started to travel, which I actually did 2 cruises with Hay House, and one particular cruise which I did before I went teaching. This was with Wayne Dyer and Cheryl Richardson, and the one with Cheryl Richardson was Write, Speak and Promote, which is about writing a book. Anyway, I went on that trip, and I had no idea who I was going to share a cabin with, but the man I shared a cabin with was the name of Wayne. And the ironical part about this whole cruise was Wayne Dyer was on the trip, but all our little group that we formed over a period of time, we just laughed. We had our other man called Wayne. This man was an amazing man. To me, he was a messenger from God. Wow. Every morning he would share information with me. We would talk. He was my teacher morning and night. And I remember one night we were just sitting there and he's talking about the book. And he said, "They are waiting for you to get that book out." And I said to him about a nun who was a major influence in my life, and she'd passed away a couple of years ago, or before that. And I said, "I felt that she was helping me write the book." And she said, "She is. She's standing there right beside you." And this man was just, It was incredible just meeting him and just connecting with him. And I remember one night I looked at him and I said, because of his ability, I said to him, "Can I speak to my dad?" Because my dad had passed away, and I'd never expressed the things that I really wanted to express to my father in a beautiful way. I had a lovely rapport with my dad. I loved my dad. He taught me so much about humility. He taught me about connecting to women, being the support of women. You know, he's modelled that brilliantly for me, and plus hard work on a farm. Anyway, he just said, and he went and quote his words. He got, this is Wayne's words, he got Archangel Michael to come in, and then I was able to actually communicate to my dad. And just the way he expressed that, I knew it was him. And it was such a healing for me to be able to say what I said and what Dad actually repeated back to me. And I remember when I got back to Sydney, we both went on the train. He went on to the international airport, and I thought I'd never see him again. But he was a guy that gave me a massive message for me. Sure enough, 6 months later, I published that first book. And I know the influence that had on people. It never was a bestseller, but it's not about that. It's about making a difference in someone's life. And also it's about putting your own thoughts and everything together.
Right.
So that was wonderful. I really appreciated that. Then once all that finished, I started doing programs for unemployed, disengaged youth. And I thought that would be the next chapter of my life. But it just seemed that every time something would start, it would finish. Then something else would start, then it would finish. Something else would start and finish. And what it was doing, now I look back on it, my skill set or my experiences were expanding. And then, like as if Spirit was saying, that's enough of that. You've got that under control now. The next one, because the programs I did initially, the first one was for disengaged disability services, which is a mixture of men and women. The next one was predominantly all male. And the next one that I did that particular year was all predominantly all women. Then there was some corporate work. Then that closed. And then I got a message that I needed to go to Egypt. And I've gone, okay. And this guy that I met, who a very profound man, which I think you'd find interesting interviewing this guy, he said to me, I'll do my best. I needed to see him. And this was down in Koroit. And his ability is quite profound. I remember when we were walking it in the national park at Koroit. I can't remember the name of it at the moment. It'll come to me. Tower Hill, it's called. And I remember him walking. He stopped, took his shoes off, and just got on the ground and honoured all the Aboriginals. He could see the Aboriginals that have been murdered there. That's his ability to see different dimensions. And he took us and we sat round in this little circle. And all the elders in another dimension came, and we healed that whole land. And part of us were all to do that. And I remember standing in front of him and I wanted to talk to him. I don't know why, but I was there. And he just looked at me and he went, "Get that fear out." And he literally just threw it away. And I remember that moment, it was a massive shift of change of me. It was the first step of getting that fear out of my body, of actually doing what I needed to do or whatever the next chapter was, and just embrace it unconditionally. Your sound dropped out there, mate.
Sorry, What year was this?
This would be about 2000, I'd say 2012 before I left teaching.
You're still in 2012. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so I've gone backwards and forwards a bit.
No, that's
so that
fine.
would have been
I just was trying to figure out. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So I just remembered that part because he had a major influence at that particular time about going to get your codes. Right. And I thought, what the hell are you talking about, your codes? I had no idea what that meant. And then later on, when I started doing some retreats for people, I met a lady there that, again, said to me, "You need to go to Egypt. That's why I'm coming back to Egypt." And this might sound really weird, but I said to Spirit, I want a really clear sign that I'm to go to Egypt. And she shared with me part of my past lives that I had in Egypt and who I was or my soul was, not me, my soul was at that particular time. And I remember, this might sound really weird, but I went to the toilet and here's this crown there. And that was one of the things she'd shared with me. So I realized I needed to go to Egypt. So I sold all my BHP shares that I had and off to Egypt I went. And that was the start of something new and my connections to Egypt. And because most of the people on those trips are women, as I know what you've talked about, a lot of the programs that we do, 90% of the people are women, and we often I'd be only one or two men at these particular events. Anyway, I'd always help people put their stuff on the bus or put them onto the boat or whatever. And this lady said to me, "Oh, you're a Knights Templar." And again, I had no idea what that meant. But you start to realise, then I started to understand the Cathars and who they were. So all those bits of my past lives come along together. So that was fine. I came back from Egypt and had this massive pain in my body. I literally, as the old saying, I had a broomstick stuck up my bum. I could not get out of bed. It was so painful. And for about 3 or 4 days or more, it was just incredibly stressful. And that time, what I was doing was I had nowhere to live because I'd actually moved out of where I was. I ended up finding myself a house-sitting job, and I wrote 3 more books, literally just channeled. Wow. As a photographer, you've seen my work. You've seen some of the photographs I've taken with reflective statements about life. And 3 books came out, Life is a Mystery Unfolding, 1, 2, and 3. And they were all photographs of mine with reflective statements. And that all happened within a period of a month. So to me, whatever happened, there was something that occurred there. And then after that, the next thing was I met this lady who walked into my life. And what her role, if you like to call it, was she completely opened my heart in a way that I had never had my heart opened. It was an amazing relationship. And part of that relationship, I ended up going to America. I went to Sedona and did a program with Greg Braden. I stayed in Sedona for a number of days, which I found was very interesting, and climbing to Castle Rock, and you've been there, so you know what I'm talking about. And then did a program in Santa Fe with Greg Braden, and some other places as well. Came back. That relationship ended. At one stage, I then went across to Bali and went to some of the spiritual places in Bali. And one of the other things that I did, which I really enjoyed, was going to Lombok Island and swimming with the giant manta rays. And to see one of them, literally 6 feet away from you, looking you straight in the eye, that's an experience I will never, ever, ever forget.
Yeah.
You're just vulnerable, just laying there in this water in the open sea. That was crazy.
That's radical.
Yeah, it was. Radical. But I know, I felt I had to go, and I just went. Yeah. So then I came back, and that relationship that I had, I ended up doing them another 4 programs for unemployed, disengaged youth. I'd completed 2 of them, and then I went to go and see the new CEO. She cut the contract, and I've gone, okay. I felt pain in my stomach. The next day I went for a walk around the lake in Ballarat, and I asked my body, what is this pain about? And I felt there was betrayal. I thought there were lies. I thought there was deception. I just really didn't like that feeling. But by honouring those feelings, the pain went. So then I looked at the situation. The relationship I was in had ended. The house that I was in, the lease was already up, so I would have been asked to move at any stage. And that contract had been cut. There's 3 things. When 3 things happen, to me, Spirit is trying to get a message to you. So in that moment, I asked the question. I said, then I asked my body, is there anything else my body wants to tell me? And the answer was, yeah, but money. And I said, well, I've already got reasonable money put away as a result of the other programs I'd done. And then the next answer I got was, I can go to Scotland now, my ancestral family, that I'd always wanted to go to since 2003. So I realised I can go. That was on the Thursday. On the Friday, I was working at the Mind Body Spirit Festival in Melbourne. And that particular day, I said to Spirit, I want a very, very clear message that I'm to go to Scotland. That day, I met 5 different people. All these people I respected in the industry of what we do. I didn't ask them any questions, but they all shared with me a similar type of thing about going overseas and Scotland. At 5 o'clock, 5 in my language is change. I walked outside, sun's coming down, and there was a footpath that's painted yellow. The sun hit that path, it's all yellow, went straight to where I am in my heart. I knew in that moment I needed to go to Scotland. I was there in a month's time. And that was the next chapter that I will tell you in a second as I draw breath. So, Scotland. I went to all the spiritual places I could go to. That was the whole point. It wasn't just to go and just have a tourist part. It was to go to all the spiritual places I could go. So I spent 3 months in Scotland, and I'll remember there's one particular place. One lady or friends of mine said, "Oh, you should go to Tongue." Tongue's right up on the north coast of Scotland, and there's a mountain there. And as I'd driven into that place, and you can only, because I was always walking, or I never hired a car, I walked or went by train or by bus. This time, you can only go into this place once a week, because there's the only transport in once a week, in and out. So I had to stay for a week, which was fine. I booked a place, stayed in a caravan. That's when I started writing some information. But this mountain, I'll never forget it. I was driven in, saw this great big mountain, and the word said to me, "You climb me." That night, I ran into 2 guys from the Shetland Islands. They would be in their early 30s, and we talked about actually climbing that mountain. The next morning, we got up, and if you can imagine the north coast of Scotland, it was perfect weather. So up we go. We walk this mountain. We go up the saddle part, and I remember getting stuck at one spot and saying to God, "This is not where it's supposed to end. Come on, get me out of here." I just felt stuck. So it pushed me out of them. I got onto this little spot of the mountain at the top. These other guys were on another spot, and I'm all there by myself. And in that moment, I just felt this massive, beautiful, feminine energy come over me. I just felt an inner peace, and all my hands started to tingle. I got off the mountain, I found out it was called the Queen of Scottish Mountains. I felt in that moment there was an activation in terms of my work. It was amazing. And then the interesting part, meeting different people along the way and what they shared with you or shared with me to make you realise or have an awareness. Because I find it's interesting in relationships, we find out who we are. Because it's in the relationship. You can't do it on your own. You can do all the inner work, but it's only the reflection of what other people share with you and say to you that you find out who you are on a deeper level. I then went into England. So then I went to all the other spiritual places, Glastonbury, Avery, Stonehenge, all those particular places, down to Merlin territory, down at Tintagel, which was lovely. I quite enjoyed connection to Merlin. There's a whole story behind that, but that's enough for another day. But at the end of the 6 months, I thought, oh, done. But then my son said to me, "Dad, don't rush home." He said, don't rush home. You've spent all your money getting there." And I realised, wow, I can go to Europe now and spend 3 months there. I'd always wanted to walk the Camino. I'd always wanted to go to Lourdes ever since I was young, because teaching in a Catholic school. St. Francis of Assisi was always a part of what I loved, his prayer. And Rumi, who I have a great love of. I love Rumi. I don't know if you know who Rumi is, but thank you. Yeah, I just love him. Every work that I do, when I do readings or I do sound healings, I always read a Rumi card, and it's always appropriate. And I actually drew a card today for us as well. And at the end, I'd love to share that with you if I may. So, and then I'd always, because of my understanding of the Cathars and the Knights Templars, I wanted to do the south of France. My partner, who we ended that relationship with that I told you about before, she came and joined me in Barcelona after I walked the Camino. And we went through all the south of France. And we did all those places that I shared with you. The Camino was incredible. I did it in winter, which was fine. I didn't have my wet weather gear, so I didn't start in France. I started in Pamplona. And I remember coming into this little village, and if you like to call it a village, it'd be 1 or 2 houses, and that's about it. And this guy's ringing a bell, and it's Knights Templars village. Mm-hmm. And as I walk in, he looked at me and said, "We've been waiting for you." He took me in, met some other guys. We had a coffee and a biscuit and whatever. And at the end, when I walked out, they pulled out this whopping great big sword, and he just went like they night shoot type of thing. And I've just gone, wow, that was crazy. And, and the point that I get to, Todd, at this stage is all these experiences that I've had and continue to have, I keep on asking the question, who am I on a soul level in this lifetime and for the work that I'm here to do? Because we can let our ego get carried away and go, we've done this, this, and this, and this. But the thing is that they're just our experiences that our soul has had to bring us to this particular point in time on our planet. So I keep asking myself that question. And when I share some information with you later about Mary Rod, who I know you got coming on again, I find this whole world so crazy in the context that we have really no idea who we really are. And the connections we keep making day after day after day on different levels to activate something or whatever it is that we are to remember.
I totally agree with you.
I got to say something to you. I've never seen you so quiet.
Well,
what's going on? I'm just pausing because I cared for a moment.
I mean, it's a good observation.
Okay.
Well, we're all going through a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes you have these. Well, I mean, I don't think there's any coincidences. I was touched by your, what little I, discovered, on your page. I was very touched by it. It fits, energetically. I can relate.
Yeah.
This whole thing about Cathars and Templars and, Druids, Bards, Egypt. I mean, it's the same trail I'm on, and but no, I'm just taking this all in. But yeah, I admittedly I'm going through a little bit, So sometimes you have your energy, and sometimes you gotta allow, just allow it. So I'm enjoying this, though. I'm very.
Thank you, mate.
Yeah.
I just needed to break. I just needed to breathe before I go to the next bit.
Well, I can break. I mean, I have some questions formulating, but I'm
it's okay. So we're back to the Camino, and that particular time in Spain, I think it was 2018, 2019, I think 2018. This massive winter storm came through. I remember walking up on the really highest places where it all snowed, and I remember walking on this track because there's very few people around, and I just felt the energy of Dad walking with me. And I felt the whole Camino trip for me was all about clearing my ancestral line.
Right.
And at the end of it, I just felt the energy or the words that came through was, yeah, you've done what you said you were here to do. So that to me, quite a profound experience.
Yeah.
And I then got back to Barcelona after that had finished. And I remember I was going to pick up my friend at the airport. And I looked after myself as well as I could food-wise, but on the train trip from one side to the other, which is a full day, I really didn't eat a lot of food. I remember going down on an escalator to go down and down and down, and I could feel myself getting all dizzy, and I ended up collapsing, and I split my eye open. And I remember when I woke up, because I collapsed, there was this lady and a man beside me. Are you okay? The ambulance people came, took me to hospital, wouldn't let me out until they were completely satisfied. I couldn't contact my partner because with the internet and everything else, I couldn't contact. She had no idea where I was. Finally, we did get back together again. That was okay. But that night, we talk about purging. I remember you've spoken about that. That particular night, I went to bed, must have been probably 8 or 9 o'clock because I was just absolutely buggered. Woke up at about midnight when my partner came to bed. The whole bed, when I'm talking about saturated, I mean saturated. Yeah. Every sheet, the pillow, we wrung out the pillow and it just dripped with water. I just felt there was a massive, massive purging of whatever was to be released from me. That was incredible. I cannot describe enough how much sweat that came out of my body. So
I've been there.
That was yeah, that was big. So anyway, then we went from there, went up to Assisi. Assisi again was a very interesting place. Different situations. I remember at Assisi, we stayed in this beautiful place. We left there. We ended up staying there for 2 days and then go to Rome. But we ended up choosing to stay in Assisi because it was such a beautiful, beautiful, heartfelt place. We went into another accommodation, which was owned by the same people. And as we walked in, I could just smell this incredible rose perfume. And I didn't say anything to my partner at the time, but I looked around. There was no incense. There was no flowers. We left. We did a walk, came back, and I said, "Did you smell that?" And she said, "Yes." It was the same smell of roses that I experienced when I went to the Chalice Well in Glastonbury when I left the last day. There's a little, I forgot the words they called it. It was a little part where they had statues or things in it. And I wanted to just go back and say thank you. That same smell. So, again, I don't know what it all means, but
Well,
I know it's something.
it sounds like that, you know, I mean, the struggle for words, but I mean, it sounds like you were retracing your steps. You know, I mean, whether it's literally or figuratively, you know, like picking up code. You know, people talk about grid work, and I think it works mutually, right? Like you're activating or depositing something or touching something, but at the same time, you're receiving. You
Yeah,
know, at the same time, yeah.
yeah. I would agree with that. Anyway, when I came back from there, I was the guy I met at one of the psychic expos said to me one day, he said, "You have no idea who you are." And I've gone, okay. And he started talking about the Tat Brotherhood. I don't know if you've heard of the Tat Brotherhood. It all relates to Egypt. It all relates to Thoth.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you, because I had no idea what that was all about. The first time I went to Egypt, I took a photograph of myself with a baboon. I don't know why I took it, but I
There were
just a
with a.
baboon, as in a statue, the statue of a
Oh, I
baboon.
thought you said a baboon. I thought, what the hell's a baboon
Exactly.
doing in Egypt?
No, it was a baboon, but it was a statue of a baboon.
Mm.
I didn't understand the significance of that until I went to Egypt the second time. So the second time I went back, and I remember again saying to Spirit, "You want me to go? You better find the money for me because I didn't have what 8 grand or whatever it was to go." Ironically, one of my mates who I have a long rapport with, he said to me, "Oh, Leon, I've got an offer for you. Can you come and look after my IGA store?" He said, "The managers have just left. Your skills is life coaching and your skill of having a restaurant. Can you go and look after it?" So I did. Cut a long story short, that gave me all the money to go to Egypt the second time. So
Isn't it
I
funny how
thought,
these
right,
things work out?
oh, you're not
And
far
even
wrong.
and even more so now. I mean, like it's crazy now. Like you know you get something and you allow it, and then boom, there it is. The next
Yeah.
step or whatever the resources you need or the person you need to meet or whatever. It's quite amazing.
Oh, I'm seeing it all the time. And as long as as long as it resonates to your heart,
Yeah,
it's not coming from your ego about what you
yeah,
request, it manifests.
yeah,
That's what I see.
yeah.
So the part about Egypt the second time was I remember going into I can't remember the name of the temple, but I was walking with the guy who organized it from Australia. And we came around the corner where this temple was, and right across the top was all these baboons. And in that moment, the statues of them. And he was explaining that I found out that Thoth, before he was drawn as the picture as the ibis, was the baboon.
You're
And I just
kidding.
burst into, no, I'm not.
Wow, I've never seen any of that depicted, or even read it. I don't recall. I mean, I've seen the canine, you know, hybrid or like the dog hybrid,
Yes.
reptiles. You know, I've
Mm-hmm.
had that and things I've seen, and even when I've gone there in dimension, but I've never seen. So
Yeah.
that's very interesting. I'm gonna have to look that up tonight. See what I can find out.
Okay. But I just burst into tears.
Yeah.
I just absolutely burst into tears. And then I realized it all just came back why I'd been hung because I wouldn't give the information as the Tat Brotherhood, so my connection to Thoth. I didn't give that information to the priests who wanted all that power. And I wouldn't give it. So I kept my mouth shut.
Right.
And then I look at now, it's almost now in this lifetime, it's time to actually speak. and not be afraid to speak.
Yes.
And I find more of us now, and the ones that you've been speaking to, it is our turn to speak, because we need to bring change in this world. But we always have to come from our heart, and they're the people that you've got on have been quite profound at doing that. And those of us who are just sitting in the background now, having listened to this, we're literally detoxifying our body from the mainstream media and filling it up with love from all these other places and realizing we're not that weird after all.
No. Crazy isn't crazy anymore.
No.
Crazy is the new normal. But yeah, and I think too, I really like your explanation. The term detoxify too. I mean, and I feel like that like this conversation, like listening to you, because I'm always a spectator. You know what I mean? It's like I'm in a session every time, but just the conveyance of the story. Now that we've got to this point, especially where there's less or no egoic in the story, it's just sharing an experience of transparency and vulnerability. Because face it, we weren't speaking up because it was a vulnerable feeling in this upside down realm. And now I think that obviously that's turning. But every time we hear somebody, I believe that's the highest code activation we can receive, and it becomes contagious. So not only are you opening up code in me and other people, but then they have part of the reception of that code is to get off their butt and go do it too. You know what I mean? So it's really cool.
Yeah. So I like the words of Marianne Williamson. You know, one aspect of it, which is by doing what we're doing, we're giving permission for other people to do the same.
Yeah.
To actually step out, and if it gives one person the courage to do that, I think that is great. Yeah. Where was I? Egypt. Came back from Egypt. God. Next thing is I met a man at what would I call being man. This guy was running programs for men to be men, for want of a better word. And he was an American guy in Australia, beautiful man, name's Aaron. And he was running a retreat in Bali. Sorry, not Bali, in India. And it was a being called Being Man Retreat, and they also had at the same time Being a Woman Retreat. And all the men came together. What it was this incredible energy of connecting to the different chakra systems and the archetype of each one of those chakra systems for what it was to be a man. 8 days, one of the most powerful experiences that I've had, where men could be men and experience what it's like to be a man and be vulnerable, but accepted in that vulnerability.
Right.
Such a powerful, and I have a very strong belief in this one. I think only a man can call a man out on his stuff. Women can do it. But I think when a man looks at a man straight in the eye and calls him out, a man feels it.
You know, I said this about 2 weeks ago. And I didn't say it with as much conviction as you, but I said, I'm beginning to think. Well, actually, I did say it that way. I said that for some reason, I guess because of the separation, right? The old Mars-Venus thing, right?
Yes.
That not only can only a man call a man out, I'm not sure what words I use, but the same goes for woman to woman. Like there's something about the same language or the same type of brain or something. I don't know, but you're absolutely right about that. It's a very interesting. I was going to say proposition, but I mean I believe it's a very interesting reality.
Yeah. So that was interesting. And while I was there, I ran into a guy in one of the streets who had sound bowls, Tibetan bowls, and I started playing them. And my relationship that I had that ended, the one that I connected with when I went back to England, when I walked into the place, I picked up these chakra chimes and I just played them. I just continually played them. Then when I came back to Australia with my experience that I had in India, I bought a number of bowls, and then some other people gave me some bowls, and I've kept on accumulating it. And now what I do, every Tuesday night here at my house here, I do sound healings.
Group,
And
group
ones. Yeah. And I love it.
Yeah.
And it's not me loving it, it's what people are giving me the feedback.
Yeah.
When COVID hit, I deliberately put it out on the internet through Zoom for free. I just did it, and people connect with that. And I thought, no, this is my contribution. So whatever the frequency I'm putting out, whatever the healing that's occurring, I know it's making a big difference.
Yeah.
And I will come back to that in a second later on when I talk about Terrenia passing.
Well, obviously over here in Sedona, in this incredible portal with Ty and Serena, they have a set of gongs. I don't know if you've seen any of the studio sessions we've done, but they've got a set of gongs there, and other things. She has her studio back here, and she uses a variety of things. But there's no question that as we're making this transition and we're evolving, that as powerful and as essential and really as on point as the vocal aspect of us, the voice or the resonance of that comes from that chakra is so important, and even having conversations. But the reality of what you're describing with the sound thing, I mean, it's amazing to see. It's amazing to be able to go in here. I can walk in here, for instance, at night. Sometimes I sleep up here because I work late, and I might be a little bit off or something, right? And I'll go in there and I don't even know what I'm doing, but it's all intuition anyway, right? Just like the tarot does. And I'll hit one, and then I'll vibrate one, and I'll just do like 5 or 6 things, and then I'll lay down, and it's amazing what it can do. Yeah.
I've had people that been here said, I've come in, I've got pain in my shoulder, at the end of it, it's gone. And people have come in, they're absolutely tired, buggered, but they come and then they walk away refreshed. And there's a lady that I connect with in Melbourne. She has a neurological issue. I think it's called FND. I can't describe it exactly. Now, I play for her every week, and it's a giving and receiving. I've been doing it now for almost 1.5 years for her, and the release that she gets of pain is incredible. She absolutely loves it. Now, it doesn't last obviously all the time, but that linked with the oils that I sell from Egypt for her, it makes a major difference for her. The benefit that comes for me is that she then channels back to me, because of her connection to be able to channel information back to me that affirms what I'm doing and where I'm going. And we just love our sessions. It's wonderful. But the important point of it is the sound, and particularly when I play the didge. She said when I play the didge for her, it just takes her to another dimension. It's incredible.
Man, your light worker toolbox must be like something you got to pull with a trailer. I mean, it's fascinating.
I could turn the camera around and show you, but it depends on what time we finish. I could do a little playing for people if you choose.
We can do that. Yeah, I mean, I'm good for another 45 minutes. I mean, if you want to go an hour and a half, that's cool. I'm good.
Okay. Well, we'll do that. Okay. Let me come back to where we're at. I came back from India, and one of the things that you're right.
Yeah. I'm getting a download. So I have to check in real quick. What is this? What's this in regard to? It's usually basic. Yeah, go ahead.
I came back from India, and I remember chatting to the dear friend, and I said to her, do you want to relook at having a relationship again? She said no, and I said that's fine. So for the next 2.5 months, I just relaxed, did a lot of house sitting up and down the east coast of Australia. I'd been doing that for a while. And for about 2.5 years. And when that all finished, not finished, I ended up saying after I came back from India, I say, Spirit, I want a relationship now. I'm open to having a relationship. I enjoyed that 2.5 years time by myself. And again, it's not about being alone. It's just, or lonely. You're living on your own, but everything's happening in the connections that you're making and places that you're going. So I'm at the Sydney Mind Body Spirit Festival, I'm sitting at a table. Behind me, there's a table that no one's sitting at. That was on the Thursday and the Friday. On the Saturday, this woman walks past, dressed magnificently, tweaking her little hips, and just sits behind me. And I just turn around and go, what the hell was that? She sat up, and then 5 minutes after she sat up, she said to me, oh, what time's your break? And I said, oh, 12 o'clock or 12:30, doesn't really matter. She said, oh, mine's at the same time. Would you like to have coffee? So I go, okay, right, so I have coffee. Cut a long story short, we had this lovely little connection. COVID hit on that Sunday, which meant everything had to close down. I was in Queensland at the time. I had nowhere to stay. My son rings me and says, Dad, get home, back to Victoria, because he knew I had nowhere to stay. Terenia and I then communicated backwards and forwards for the next 3 weeks. Easter Sunday comes along. We made a commitment to get together. The symbolism of Easter Sunday is new beginnings, new life. The very next day, my son, and I've had this conversation with him, so I'm not saying anything that's out of line here. He said to me, Dad, this is not working, going to have to leave. I rang Terenia. I said, where do you want to live? She said, in the Blue Mountains. And I said, well, you sort it out because I have no idea where that is. 2 days later, I'm in Sydney. 10 days later, we had a place here in Katoomba, up in the Blue Mountains. It was absolutely brilliant. For the next 5 months, because everything was shut down, we were walking in the bush, we're going up waterfalls and creeks and everything else, and just loving life. It was wonderful. And then one day she woke up and she felt a lump under her left arm, which we found out was lymphoma. So she had cancer. She never used the word cancer, and we thought with our ability that we had with energy healing, sound healing, crystals, oils, and all that, and a positive attitude, we would fix it. And I'll never forget when we went back to the doctor and he did a scan on it after this time. The words were, he said, it's gone. And the nurse said exactly the same thing. The surprise on their face was incredible. We knew that we could do that. So we thought everything was done, and he wanted to do some more treatment. He wanted to actually do stem cell implants or change of implants into, stem cell treatment. So you're collecting your own stem cells, freezing them, then putting back in your body. Her body would not release any stem cells. So she chose to keep on doing what we were doing, plus also naturopathy, alternative medicines, healings. That process was about a 2-year process. So we'd be going up and down the highway, back down to the hospital over that period of time. We kept on doing her work. She didn't share that with anybody because she didn't want anyone to know in that regard what was going on. Then it came back, and it came back into her lower body. And when it really came back, everything really started to go in a negative point, knowing that she wasn't going to come out of this. I'm going to jump forward a little period here. My mother passed away this year, only around a month before Terenia passed. My uncle passed away, that's my dad's side, and my auntie passed away. So this year I've had four passings, so it's been quite a big year in terms of people leaving. When Terenia, I came back from my mother's funeral, I looked at Terenia and I said, I've just got to take you to the hospital. So I went to it. We couldn't get into doctors because up here with all the doctor situation and what's going on around the world, you couldn't. So I had to take it directly to the hospital. The doctor there was magnificent. He really, really was. He came in, took a blood test. When he came in to sit down, I knew his answer wasn't good. He was in his, he would have been in his 50s. And he said, look, we'll do a scan to make sure. But he said, the only options you've got is palliative care or dialysis, going up and down the highway 3 days a week, but it's not going to improve your life. In that moment, she said, when we spoke about it, we'll do palliative care. Came back, he confirmed that, and so that was the decision we made. We just moved into a new place, which is absolutely perfect for what we wanted. So we set up in the lounge room where all the sun from the north-facing sun was coming straight into a room. She wanted to be able to be surrounded by family and friends and be in no pain, no fear, and to be able to pass consciously. They were the criteria that we spoke about. So I arranged, part of my role was to be what I call the gatekeeper, where I arranged everyone who would come and see her over a period of time. Her son came out from Poland. So for the next 3 weeks, that's exactly what happened. So there was a whole process that I went about. Every morning, I'd get her up, go to the bathroom, prepare her for the day. I would always put some Egyptian oils on her, which was very therapeutic for her. And I'd always play the music, the bowls for her. And I'd allow the people to come and see her over that period of time. And then at night time, we would just put on a movie that was very much, they were the B-grade movies, but they were love, they were romance, they were really good messages, no violence or whatever. And so we went through that process. The day her son went back to Poland, I thought she would pass the next day. But 2 of her girlfriends came around that day. That ended that idea, which was fine, because it gave us a chance to prepare what other clothes she wanted to wear when she was passing. I'd already made all the connections that had been made, even the funeral people. I'd already been told about what funeral people to use, and they were lovely. That's another story which I'll get to in a second. On the Tuesday morning, that was after the Monday, on the Tuesday morning, about 1:15, she called me and she said, "Darling, I've had enough." So I said, "Okay, let's prepare doing what we knew we were going to do, as in meaning allowing her to pass consciously without pain." She had very little painkillers, morphine. The doctors had already given me the morphine that I could give her if she needed it, and it was very much the minimal dose. So she was very conscious the whole time. I said to her, "Do you want me to call your son?" She said, "No, I just want to be with you." So that was about 1:15 roughly. About 4 o'clock, and I'll never forget this, the wind really started to get up massively, and the back door banged 3 or 4 times. Now, that door just does not bang. When it's locked, it's locked. Bang. She looked up. This is a little later on. She looked up, looking all the way around the room. In that moment, I knew she could see the beings who were coming to collect her. The eyes were so intense the way she could see that. Then she looked at me calmly and she said, "Darling," she said, "you're fading away. I can't see you clearly." In that moment, I knew her soul was leaving her body. Then once that occurred, slowly just stopped her breathing. And when she stopped breathing, and some of the people who are watching will understand what I'm about to say, I looked at the clock. It was 4:44. In my language, that's the angelic beings came to collect her. The wind stopped. Everything was perfectly calm. No pain, consciously died. Beautiful.
That's amazing.
It was. So when I sat back and thought about all this later, I thought the gift, because she was a very strong woman, strong as in wanting to do things her way, the way it should be, everything else. The gift that she gave me was for me to love her the way I wanted to love her or choose to love her, because I'd often say to her, "Don't tell me what to do, I know what I'm doing." And in the end, she'd finally say, "Sorry, I'm sorry," because it was just a de facto statement, then. So that was the gift that I was able to give her, just to be able to do this in such a beautiful way for her. And then I didn't realize the gift that she's given me is because I can help other people do the same thing now. There are so many people who die in fear. There's so many people who die. I saw my dad pass away. He was unconscious at the time. I've seen another lady die totally unconscious. They weren't there because of that, but they were drugged out in our Western world. And I know people won't like me saying that, but I feel is what's going on.
Yeah, and I think that, I think you said this at the beginning of the show, that we don't really know what the hell's going on here. It's gonna blow our minds even beyond what we could think of the most extreme situation. But energy's energy, and there's a soul lineage. That's our life, and who's to say the impact that or the difference? Let's say that the difference between someone who dies in that type of peace versus someone who doesn't. You know what I mean? I don't think that our energy, our essence, is our essence. But I mean, where we're at on the soul's journey, I don't think it changes just because the physical body transitions, or expires. So that's, potentially, I mean, who knows? I mean, they talk about one of the narratives is there's a soul trap and it recycles people. And because of the state they come out of death in, they're easily manipulated or whatever it is. But like it could be just something like that. It makes all the difference in the world. That gives them clarity, or at least at a minimum, makes their transition, to the other side, with more ease and grace.
Well, as what I'm actually put together now which is the next chapter of my life, is conscious dying with dignity and grace. The exact words that you just used. And I've just designed everything that I've designed for my literature, my signage, everything has just been done. I completed it this morning and sent it off. But it's interesting, Todd, in all of this, there's more to it. It's like it's also educating the people who are the family. Because I often find what I'm hearing at times through different people, the family can't let the person die.
Right.
They're too sad to let them go. But we need to give them permission to die.
Yeah.
It's okay to die, darling. Yeah. And consciously say that and do it from here.
Yes.
But the other thing too is I think it's also important, I think this is part of my role with my background, is to be able to talk to someone who knows that they've got a terminal illness, know that they're dying, and say, well, how are you feeling with this? How are you feeling about dying? What's your thoughts on that? Because to me, it's about I've got to connect with who they are and not project my beliefs or thoughts. I've got to meet them where they're at. And then the same thing, educate their parent or the people or their friends so that they're on the same page.
Yeah.
I think it's so important. And,
well, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense because, I think we've all been in that situation. Well, not to the degree you have, but I'm just saying where we have a loved one that's not transitioning suddenly. You know what I mean? And
yes.
And if you think about it, most of the time, because there's a lot of family around, where visitors and such, and they're walking in with fear. They're walking in into a situation that we've been misguided on. I guess you could say.
I agree.
And
I do.
So, like you're basically advocating or creating a template that's transforming the energy that's there or the environment, and then almost like dragons guarding a gateway. You're like, okay, before you come in here, you've got to, align with this frequency and understand the beauty of this.
Yeah. It was interesting, Todd. I spoke to a lady who I highly respect. She does the same work as I do at the Mind Body Spirits Festival. She'd be in her late 70s now. And she just calmly said to me, Trenya's needed on the other side. She said, well, all the people who are passing at the moment, all those souls that are leaving, they need people to support them and help them on the other side. And I said that to Terenia very calmly. I said, you're needed on the other side. And she didn't even bat an eyelid. She just looked at me and said, yes, I know. So she was ready. And she knew that the passing of it was a whole other chapter. And I've since connected with her through people who've got different skills to what I've got, who've shared with me that she is so happy, so grateful, and so much at peace with where she is and everything. And from up there, she said, everything makes sense. Everything.
So you've connected with her, obviously.
I have, but not myself personally. The way I get a feeling. I haven't had an image or an energy.
Right, but I mean,
I get a feeling that I feel through my body. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, there's only one Claire. But I mean, on the surface, it's a lot of different ways. But so when I say communicate, I just mean, you're communicating with her. So, that's powerful.
It is.
It's a powerful validation.
Yeah.
And I think too, like with what you were saying about the show and people stepping up and being heard, it sets a new precedent. So even like what you're doing with this, what you did with her and what you're expanding and sharing with others, I think sets a precedent. It's almost like because it is something to be, it's something to be treasured and revered. It's more of a, I guess, in a way, a celebration, but it's just everything but what we've made it. So you're setting a new precedent of old, maybe, of sacred wisdom or sacred practices.
Yeah.
And to take into account, because so much of what we're going through now, we're being put into a place of where, by force or flow, in my opinion, that we're to embody all this stuff that we talk about, because otherwise it's not worth anything. And I think that's what happens. We start to say, well, like, nobody's doing this. Well, it doesn't matter. In fact, if somebody's doing it already, we probably need to take a look at it, because we are changing the course here. And if you just look at this little example, this huge example, I mean, it is the example. I mean, we're talking about death, the biggest program there is, right? And but the energetic impact, like embodying the multidimensionality and all of the knowledge that comes with it, but the action creates the wisdom. And so it's, you look at this on the surface and okay, what does it do? What's different about it? Well, the family members and you and the spouse and so on, and maybe some of the caretakers are introduced to some coding by this process that's been played, that they've participated in. But it's far more than that. It's affecting all timelines and dimensions. It's giving the new code that this realm gave us or afforded us the opportunity to create for the universe. It's very unique because it comes from the human experience, and to be initiated or indoctrinated into it the way that you were through such a what would you say, such a truthful or honest or real relationship that takes into account what love is and is what love is, I mean, that had to be. Did you have any weak moments? Did you break down? I mean, or did you have?
It's interesting. That's a really interesting question, Todd. I think it comes back from my farming background. When there was a job to be done, I don't even like using the word job because it's just got a connotation, but when the situation's presented to you, you just do it.
Yeah.
And that, to me, and this, I actually said this at, so I also arranged the spreading of the ashes for her, and I invited only those that really connected with who I am and who Trania were. We had about 26 people. It was beautiful. And one of the things I said to them, the gift that she gave me was to discovering an aspect of myself that I didn't know was there. And I think none of us know what we're capable of until something is presented in front of us.
That's right. Well, the other thing about the farm, right? I had some people on the other day. They were from Colorado, Jenny and Danny Schultz.
I heard that. Yeah, I heard you interview them.
Yeah, and it was, and I don't know if it was them because I can't figure out everything all the time.
Yeah.
But somebody I was talking to, they were talking about life on the farm, which I can't relate to, where there's a bunch of animals, and they were talking about the reverence that they had with the animals. Like, they don't just have animals; they're a part of it, right? They're respected and they're taken care of, and you know what I mean. And actually, I remember who it is now, but I won't get into it. But anyway, and part of that is, birth and physical death. And I think that there's something to be said for that, like being exposed to that. You could say the seasons, like the seasons of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the thing that's interesting, Todd, I've actually, sorry for interrupting. One of the things that I say to people is, in this situation, death, like birth, is a process. It's part of the human experience. And for what what Terenia allowed me to experience is something that you can't read about it. Like I've read the Tibetan book on living and dying a number of times, but that's all. It's all theory. It's all knowledge. It's not wisdom. What I've got now is wisdom from this experience, which hopefully I can share with other people. And even the priest I thought was fascinating, because he said to me, when I organised a funeral, he said, I'm not a fire and brimstone priest. And he wasn't. He allowed me to use some of my tools, like the bowls, like the little bells that I have. He allowed me to do all those things. I brought in oils and things. And so many people who've never really been to a Catholic church or wouldn't go in there or whatever for all their reasons came up later and said, that was fantastic. And his explanation of death, meaning we don't know what's on the other side, was so beautiful. He's a beautiful man. And I thought he was actually breaking down barriers as well for people. It wasn't just about me and Terenia. I think there's a much, much bigger picture played out of this for lots and lots of people, which is why I want to share this.
It's 1 hour and 11 minutes and 11 seconds right now with 88 people in the house. That's trippy, but it's not.
Yeah. No, I know. You think the same way as I do.
Yeah, I was going to ask you something. Okay. Oh, I was going to just ask you, not to, you don't have to go into an extended thing, but I'm just curious. And now she was from Poland. You're Australian.
Yes.
That's about as polar opposite as you can get, not to mention geographically. You know what I mean? But did you, there's a lot of talk about connections such as that. And was the value of polarity and the polarity itself something that was part of your connection with her?
The big connection, I suppose, for a start, was we both did the same kind of work.
Okay.
But then again, with different backgrounds, also has its own challenges. Mm-hmm. Anyone that's been involved in relationships of different backgrounds and different things, we all know the challenges of that. Mm-hmm. And again, without me going into too much detail of that.
Well, that's very true. That's very true, and I'm glad you brought that up. I don't think people realize the cultural impact, regionally, of where people grow up, even in the way they talk, right? Even in what they say, because it can have a different connotation, wherever, like say where I come from versus where you come from. So that's a worthy and interesting statement, comment.
I'm not going to go with this into this big in a big way. My marriage was married to an Italian Dutch, 50% Italian, 50% Dutch. So I learned a hell of a lot through that.
Well, she had a huge polarity within herself, Dutch and Italian.
And then I had a major relationship with someone who was born in South Africa. So when I look back on my life, I've seen, wow, what a polarity of different experiences that I've had of different people, and each of them has their rewards and their challenges that go with that. And it was challenging. I'm not going to deny that, the relationship with Terenia, but there was so much gift that came out of it. And I always try the best I can to take it to the higher perspective of our soul. Why am I having this experience? What is the benefit of this? Because every experience is to get us to expand and help us actually help the consciousness of the planet to evolve. And the message I get very, very clearly is that I have to take this work to another level. And already the funeral people are going to put my services on their website.
Far out.
So they've been really, really good for that. They loved what I did. They came to the spreading of the ashes. All these things. I'm seeing it starting to evolve very, very quickly.
I have I have to let the thing stop for a minute. I have some friends, and I've noticed some other people. I mean, this is something that's starting to come around. I forget what they call them. Dumas or something like, I don't know.
Yeah, death doula. I don't like that phrase.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, I have a friend of mine, and she does this, and she's written about it and posted about it, and she has the same, she has the same. It's in her. It's part of her. Like, I mean, she's like you. She sees it for what it is, and
Yeah.
I think that's a good sign, though, that maybe it's just a few light workers around the world now, but it's representing the transformation, a return to the reverence of life, because that's really what it is. It's the reverence
It
of
is.
yeah, it's the reverence of the life, because after all this talk and all chasing our tail, it's right here, right now, right? I mean, it's right here. And I love that Joseph Campbell statement of, you don't find it here, you won't find it anywhere. If you
Yeah,
don't get it
I
here.
agree.
So I think the whole idea of honoring that the life itself through the person that's making the transition is a fascinating and beautiful and powerful thing.
Yeah.
It really is.
And it was.
Sounds
And
like
it was.
That sounds like the whole thing. You had a full life so far. You're not done yet.
No, I'm not. There's more to do yet. I
We
totally get that.
we got a good 15 minutes. I don't know. And you can do whatever you want. If you feel like playing
Okay.
something, if you feel like
Yeah.
pulling a card, if you feel like whatever you want to do.
Well, I
I'll leave
pulled
it
this
open
card
to
this
you.
morning. This is
Okay.
the card that I got,
Hang on.
which
Let
is
me get myself off of here. What is that? She offers the sacred wine, so drink. How beautiful is that? Yeah.
so. If you understand Rumi always talks about sacred wine as in
Mm-hmm.
love, passion here. And when I picked the deck up this morning, that was at the bottom of the deck. My eyes just went to it. And I always trust where my eyes go. I then shuffled it, shuffled it, and that card came out again. So to me, that card needs to be read. So the first part of it is the actual Rumi poem, and the second part is the channeling of what Rumi has been saying here. What I like about these particular words is, with what's happening on our planet at the moment, I think this is so appropriate. And when I've done this, what I'll do, Todd, I'll turn this around and I'll just play. I'll need to pull down the blinds a bit, but I'll just play and we'll just see where it goes.
All right.
Okay. She offers the sacred wine, so drink. O wine giver of enlightened hearts, offer me the wine of your kindness, for this is the reason you have brought me here, from the desert of oblivion. O beautiful wine giver, pour me the wine that gives me insight. Offer me the wine from the sea of love, and fill my heart with pearls. Pour it into my heart, until I shed the veil and go beyond reason. My spirit is consumed by judgment, and my thought is reduced by thoughts. Pour that precious wine over the frozen cries of skeptics, until their words become warm and their nays become yays. Will you say yes to me? I want to take you with me on a wild adventure. There we shall be tripping, tumbling, falling like fools, laughing our most outrageous laughter as we drink the sweetest of offerings. Raucous and silly shall we be, through undoubtedly we are from the noblest and most royal lineage. Nonetheless, standing inside the tavern, warm and illuminated by the golden hearth fires, we will hold on to each other, barely able to stand up straight, crying with so much laughter, sweet wine caressing through our blood.
Yeah, he's a beauty.
Oh,
The Sufi poets are phenomenal. A lot of people don't
I
realize
love it.
they're an Islamic sect.
Yes.
They're very powerful. I like Rumi and Gibran. I really love him. And then also the American Robert Frost. Those are my three favorites.
Oh, yes, yeah. No, I remember I was where I was living in Ballarat. There was a lady that lived next door to me, and we're on the side of a hill. And I'd always pick up her mail for her because she was a very older lady, and I just drop it on the door. And when she left, she gave me a voucher for $25. I went back into town and I saw called the Big Red Book of Rumi. I just picked it up. And what I found, every time I used to read at school or whatever, when I was doing things, I'd always read the words beforehand. When I picked up Rumi's, I didn't have to read the words. The words just flowed, the nuances, the inflections, the pauses, it just flowed. And I've just always, every session that I do, I start with a Rumi card. It is just, he's just so much love in those words.
Yeah.
So that's why I love that.
Yeah, there's a sister here in Sedona by the name of Gabrielle Young, and she I don't know what you would call it, channels Rumi. But what she does, she was at the first Soulogy Fest, and so imagine four guys. You got Ty was there with with his keyboards, but there was a couple of other guys that came up, and they had like some type of percussion, but like cultural stuff, like tribal, the sounds and everything, different like things like Egyptian sounds and such. Well, they didn't rehearse, and she never rehearses, and they just start playing music, and she just starts speaking Rumi, and it's just like crazy, wild. It's so good, but Rumi's a very powerful consciousness.
Yeah. I agree. Okay. And I like the word that you said. It's the consciousness of the person.
Yes.
Whether we're doing any work, and if I'm doing any healing work, whatever, it's the consciousness of the person that I'm calling in, not the person per se. And I think there's a big difference of understanding that, whether it's the consciousness of say, Isis, or the conscious of Mother Mary, or Mary Magdalene, or whoever, or Merlin. It's the consciousness of that. And when I understood that on a deep level, you just realize you're just a channel to be able to bring whatever you're bringing to the earth here to help and assist people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I consider it like a collaboration,
Yeah.
Like I write music. I would write music or write music in the old studio, and I would call in Prince, or I would call in Leonard Cohen, or whoever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I believed it.
Yeah. Well, the interesting part that's been shared with me is that I'm to build a team of people here on the earth who all we all come together. It's not just about me. It's a team of people. Doctors, nurses, other people who think the same way, who understand that, and also the team from above. To be able to work together in unison for this work that needs to be done. I'm just a conduit to assist this.
Yeah. Another great point.
I want to play a little bit of the Didge. I won't turn it around, but I'll just play it. So if people who are listening, if they just want to close their eyes and just enjoy it, I'll just play it for you, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That was awesome.
Just a quick little one.
No, that was awesome. And what was cool is that mirror behind you. After you played the ditch, we could see you in the mirror. So I made your screen big.
Ah,
That's why I made your screen big, so we could kind of, because it was kind of like, how everything is communicating with us.
yeah,
So I'm looking at
yeah,
I'm looking at your movements and hearing the sounds,
yeah,
and that's part of it too, right? And then I'm looking
yeah,
to your background, your altar, your
yeah,
wall, and see those two green figurines. Those were interesting. And then I love unicorns. The unicorns are powerful.
okay. Oh,
Yeah,
mate, you
yeah,
hold on.
yeah.
Can you see that unicorn?
Oh wow, I didn't see that one.
No, you didn't, because I've seen it.
Yeah, that's
It's
very cool.
one of my friends here paints it, by Zoe. She's an incredible artist, and Terenia actually knew she was dying, and she deliberately bought it. And to me, that takes pride of place in here of the unicorn energy into this building. Very much, very important.
Uh, my friends had asked earlier, and I didn't forget her, but thank you, Dion, for asking again. She was wanting to know, do you sell the oils from Egypt?
Yeah, I do.
You do, okay. And how
Yeah.
could somebody find? I guess they could go to your Facebook page,
Yeah, the Facebook page, and go through Messenger.
Messenger.
Connect
Yeah, yeah.
with me. Go through Messenger, and then
Okay.
go. That's the easiest way to contact me.
So, yeah, so we try to highlight everybody's name, when we do a show, and his will be highlighted. I have to do it after the show, and
Yeah,
that's part of my routine when I get off. So you just click his name and go to his page and to his messenger. But yeah, we'd love to get together with you again and do some other stuff, play and talk and whatever.
yeah,
Um,
pleasure, Todd.
yeah.
Thank you, man. I've really appreciated.
Mhm.
I've really appreciated this to be able to, and that's what I like. And I didn't say this at the start. What I love about your interviews, most interviews go for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. They just grab those bits, and that's it. You allow a story to come out, and
Mhm.
you have the ability to draw someone out on and go into depth about where a person's at. So to me, if what I've shared has helped people, or I can help other people down the track, mate, we've done what we're supposed to do.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And
Pleasure, mate.
thank you, everybody else. Probably going to come back on tonight. I like to come on when I don't feel so great. It's better than sitting on my ass. But
Yeah,
I just want to say too, yeah, thank you everybody for your continued love and support and contributions. Allow us to keep doing this every single day. And
yeah.
thank you, Leon, and thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
I can't say her name. I can't pronounce
Terenia.
it. Terenia. Thank you, Terenia,
Yeah,
very much. And we'll see you again. I'll reach out to you. Okay.
thank you.
All right,
And
brother.
also, when you speak to Mary Rodwell,
Hmm.
when's that on, please? What date's that on?
Uh, it's going to be a powerful day. It's November the 12th. Well, okay, so hang on. Let me look real quick. Because, you're on a different day than me. So that's actually going to be, it's going to be in the States. It'll be the 12th of November. So we got Judith Kuzel from South
Yep,
Africa at
yep.
noon, New York time, and then Mary Rodwell at 5 p.m. So that's going to be two. Let's see, what would that be? That would be like 9 plus 5. Be very early in the morning, Judith, but Mary would be something like I can't even think right now. But anyway, it'll be on the 13th for you. It'll be on the
Yeah,
13th.
no,
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. But I'll
Yeah,
put it out. So that should be a powerful day at
oh,
Soulogy.
mate.
Those
I had a
those
session with, sorry, I had a
you
session with Mary. It was
yeah.
very, very enlightening, incredibly powerful. I love
Uh,
her work.
yeah, I've had you know, a few people tell me they had sessions with her, and actually in the last 2 or 3 months. And I know she's very helpful to people. And I've had a lot of people tell me they've had sessions with Judith, or soul readings. You know, she did one for me, and kind of verified the whole journey of the Cathars. It was the same thing, like a lot of stuff you were talking about, south of France and all that. But yeah, they're both very beautiful, and we're very, you know, honored to be able to collaborate with them on a pretty frequent basis. So, but yeah. All right, brother. I love you.
Hey, man.
Peace
Thank
out.
you, man.
And I'll see you soon.